Hello, time has flown since the last edition of All Things Business, the podcast. But with the new year has come a new sound. I'm John Griff, and in its new mid-month location in the diary, this podcast will now be bringing groups of business people from the region together to talk about a single overarching theme. We begin 2022 with a panel of guests who bring huge relevance to the table when it comes to maximising the potential of workforces in a much-changed working world. Mhairi Richardson is Director of Tomrom Team Coaching. Claire Williams is the UK Creative Director for OCEE Design. And Katherine White is Director of People at Wyboston Lakes. That's our panel, and this is All Things Business, the podcast. The workforce may be one of the most expensive assets in any business, but it's also the single most important asset in any business. The world of the workforce has changed hugely in the last couple of years, not only through the effects of the pandemic, but also the recession triggered by it as well. So how do you go about maximising potential in a workforce when so much has changed? To get the ball rolling, our panel discussed personal development first, and I asked Mhairi how good she felt businesses in general are at training and skilling their workforces.
Well, that's rather a big question. How good are we? Not good enough. And I think, if I'm honest, that the pressure on that is going to come greater and greater. We're in the big quit. For those of you who haven't heard that term, where people are just saying, actually, I don't want to do this anymore, this isn't enough for me. And so employers are going to have to really pull their socks up to improve the employee experience, from recruitment all the way through to onboarding, and then how they're rewarded, what the experience is at work. I think there's going to have to be a lot of changes in how people look after their people, and development is a huge part of that. I think we're also looking at potentially in the next 5 years a massive skill gap, where some of the developments we've had in the last 2 years, just in order to cope, are going to push more technology into roles, and we haven't got the people with the skills to deliver what we need. So as part of development, I would say upskilling is a huge part of that as well. So
that's a pretty bleak view, if I may say so. Yeah. What is that born out of? Is that born out of your experience going in to businesses who say, we've got the big quit going on, we can't hold on to people, we've got a massive churn rate, or something like that?
Very much. I mean, I read the Corn Ferry report, and they did a projection for work in 2022, and there's an awful lot of that in there. I don't think it is all negative. I think upskilling is a positive thing. I think people can see hospitality, for example, have had to let a lot of people go. Those people have reskilled and are now doing other things. And I just think that we will resettle. Other people will settle into other jobs. And I think some of the challenges for leadership around that are seeing those potentials, seeing the potential in people, and also being a little bit more diverse in where you're looking to recruit, bringing people with sort of cross-cultural skills. One that comes to mind is retail and hospitality. Those two, if you take somebody from the hospitality sector into retail in a senior leadership role, it will bring a different perspective to the retail. And all of that needs thinking about and developing. So I guess I'm sorry if I come across as a little bit negative about it, but I just think people need to think about it now.
There's a great deal in what you say there to unpack, and I'm going to fire the whole of that package straight at Katherine, because from the point of view of Wyboston Lakes, you have a large workforce.
Yes.
You have lots of people working in different aspects of, well, all kinds of areas. There is a retail aspect to what you do. There's a conference aspect, of course, so you're dealing with a variety and a multitude of clients.
Yes.
You've also got, of course, hospitality, which has been very, very hard hit by not only the recession that has been caused by the pandemic, but now coming out of that, a lot of what Mhairi says, with people upskilling and, frankly, disappearing. So how much of a challenge of that do you identify with, and what sort of challenge to your directorate do you hear in what Mhairi's saying?
Completely embrace everything that's being said, because we've been through that, and I think as a business, our core business is conference on the resort. So we actually have 16, 17 months of that not being open. So we had a massive hit and impact on the business there. So we had an awful lot of people who didn't work at all the whole of that time, whereas the hotel, the golf course, or the offices could open back up again. So I think one of the things we did have to lose a percentage of our team. We lost 20% of our team.
So that was redundancy as opposed to furlough?
Yeah. So we had to make a lot of people redundant in August 2020. One thing that we think we did exceptionally well with was when we made it quite clear that when we would start recruiting, they would be the first people we would go back to. They kept all their employee benefits for a full 12 months. So originally it was only going to be 6 months, but then of course we had to close again. So I think from that perspective, we took the opportunity to look at our structure of our business and what we wanted people to do. And so we did a lot of multi-skilling across the business so that we were able to bring people back. We've done a lot of that. We've looked at what does our business need moving forward, what's for our customers going to need. So what are those skills that the customer's going to need from our team?
And have those skills changed? Has your perception of those skills changed?
It has to an extent, because what people are looking for, they're looking for a lot more technology. They're looking for being able to come in and hold virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, and all of that kind of thing, which we did exactly the same. During the pandemic, our annual meetings with our team, couldn't have them in. We did it live streaming. We even had people from Italy logging in, so it was a bit bizarre. That technology has changed, so we've had to upskill people within the business to give them the skills of what they need to do. And I think now we've got everybody back. We're looking to this year's going to be a lot better. It's that nurturing of those skills that people want and we need them to have moving forwards.
Wyboston Lakes, almost by definition, is a very expansive, rural kind of a place to go to.
It is, yes.
You're director of people, so I guess you've got people who are quite distanced from each other. Does that pose operational problems for you, particularly when it comes to not only bringing back the people who might have been made redundant or perhaps went on furlough and then went elsewhere, the sort of churn that Mhairi was talking about? Has that presented problems for you in getting the business back on its feet to where we are now in January of the new year?
In normal circumstances, probably yes. We did quite well in mixing our teams back. So we took into consideration where people were homeschooling, and they said there were some that needed to be off for longer, so we brought other people back. The same jobs are done in all three venues. So we've got 2 conference venues in the hotel and spa. We have receptionists in all of them. So if one venue wasn't open, that person from there could go and work somewhere else. So we took that into consideration. It's very disjointed because we've got a lot of people who are still working flexibly from home, and will continue to do so ongoing. That's a decision we've made as a business, if they can. There's the people who are working on site. We've actually currently undergoing a refurbishment of the hotel and spa. So that's actually been closed currently for 7 weeks. So all the team from the hotel have been working in one of our venues. So we've had 7 weeks of multi-skilling and really creating a massive team environment that the engagement between each other of that team has been amazing, because they've understood what differences the venues are so different. So
you've been able to turn a threat to the business, at least in the short term, into a strength by investing in your people. That seems to be what you're saying.
Yeah, it's key. Yeah, we've kept them working. We've been able to give them different skills by working in a different venue. They've got a different culture, because the culture in the conference venue is very different from a hotel. It's a completely different style of operation and customer.
So where is the business now? And being quite pointed about it, where's the payback for the business in that investment in people that clearly you've just been making?
Customer service, key. I think we've always, in everything business I've ever been in, is if you look after your people, they'll look after your customers, and that is key. And we've always done that. We've done that throughout the pandemic. We've looked after our team so that when they're back, they're looking after our people. So that customer service, by giving them everything they need to do their job, they know that they've got that to give on to other people.
Claire, if we think about environment, Mhairi's talking about upskilling of people to protect the churn effect, to prevent the quit. You've got Wyboston Lakes, which is, when it's at full speed, is a very diverse space and a very wide space. The environment in which people work, the environment in which people engage with each other, whether it's as workers, as employees, or with the customers, is going to be key, particularly to Wyboston. But from your point of view, what does that say about the philosophy of a business and how a business moves forward after the difficulties, particularly of economic recession, which we're now seeing?
Our business over the last 18 months hasn't really hugely been affected in terms of growth and turnover, because our clients are still building for long-term future, because most of their money is tied up in their real estate, and their real estate isn't going to go anywhere. And so what they're actually saying is, if you look at it, London is only second only to Hong Kong in the cost of real estate. So whilst your people are incredibly expensive, your real estate is not far short of that. And so what people are doing now is the balance has completely shifted. So prior to the pandemic, what we were seeing is people were actively going to their organisations and asking them if they could work flexible hours or work this hybrid style of working. And they were having to put forward the business case for doing that. What the pandemic has done is it acted as an accelerant to things that were already happening. So now the balance of power has changed. And instead of individuals putting forward their case to hybrid work, organisations are having to convince their people to come back into the workplace. So the balance of power has completely changed. And the biggest leverage, or I would say one of the biggest leverages, and touching on the Great Resignation, that's, 40,000 people not happy, is that that real estate will impact on people's engagement with where they work and the quality of the space. So the spaces will possibly get smaller, but they will be more effective workspaces. So if you go into some of the most successful organisations in our capital cities and our major cities, the quality of the space will exponentially rise over the next 2 years, because they're not going to stop spending the money, they'll just spend it in a different way. And that's because the bulk of the people they're looking to recruit are millennials or Gen Z, and what they want is very different to, say, me. And so they're going to create environments that best suit them. Those very same people are inherently more likely to hop around and change jobs. 60% of them will change jobs in every 18 months. So they're more likely to change jobs. They are going to dominate what the workforce does. And also they are looking for experience over things. So they want social connection and they want work to deliver an experience.
How important in that case is loyalty going to be to a business? Mhairi talks about the big quit. Mhairi talks about the investment in people through training. We've heard from Katherine about the number of people who are coming back to the business at Wyboston because of the experience that they've had. You're talking about the working experience in the working environment. Yeah. We're recording this podcast in a brand new office space, and I've seen the workers here, the employees here, who are very much collaborating together. If you took that all away and said, right, you're all working from home now, would you get the same quality of business?
Yes. Yeah, you absolutely would. And this is because I'm a great believer in businesses grow because of innovation. Innovation is a consequence of creativity predominantly, easy communication and creativity. I think, and creativity is a social development. So you can be creative in isolation. Paul McCartney wrote yesterday, the first bar came to him in his sleep. But it was 2 years worth of collaboration that then went on to write that song. Mm-hmm. I believe to innovate, you have to be creative. Creativity eventually requires us as human beings to communicate, but that initial light bulb moment can come in isolation. And actually, I think what's going to be the future of work will be, we will never go back to all of us being in the office 5 days a week. That's not going to happen. It will be hybrid work. And what will drive the success of hybrid work and the ability for us to innovate is technology, without a shadow of a doubt. And the early adopters of smart buildings and smart technology will be the ones that drive forward economics.
Mhairi, let me ask you to respond entirely to that, because what Claire's talking about seems to be a lot of people working
almost in isolation, but facilitated by technology. Back in the day, when I used to work for a bank, you used to get everybody together. You'd have this massive one-size-fits-all form of training that went on for everybody. Claire is talking about a more technological, I hesitate to say silo kind of working, but we may see that if the technology doesn't allow people to communicate and actually share their experience. That's got to have implications for training in the environment.
Yeah, well, my specialism is teams, and so obviously that massively impacts teams, people not being together. But I agree with Claire in that actually there isn't this, culturally there is going to be a change in how people interact with each other, and you can still be as creative. But what I believe will happen in terms of workspaces and projects, work will become much more project-based, about delivering a project. And so what you'll have is teams of people who deliver projects, who could be, this could be a team, the four of us could be a team today, and then it could have two other different people in it to do with another project. And your skills will be around how you deliver within a team. So the people who are able to network well, communicate well, and are considerate of other people, good team players, will still succeed. And I think there's something I do agree with what Claire says. And I really wanted to come back to something Katherine said.
Please do, because what I was about to say was that works for certain kinds of businesses,
absolutely,
but not all. And I'm guessing, Katherine, that doesn't kind of work for an environment like yours where you've got conference working. You can't have people working away. So what's your reaction to what they say?
I do agree with it to an extent, and I think that's what's the power of the excitement of our kind of business, is we have the operational teams. They have to be there. They've got to serve the coffee, they've got to serve the customers, they've got to look after them all, they've got to do all of that. They have to be there. But we have all of our central support offices. We only have a couple of teams who are in 5 days a week, and there are reservations and meetings and events teams because they're doing the selling the clients on the floor. They're going out and speaking to them when they come in. So they are in. Every other central support department has a mix of people working at home and in the office, and it does work. The girls I work with are in most of the time because they're in the operational aspect of the business. But if they've got work to do, reports and stuff like that, they're at home. I'm at home half the time, but we work really well as a team because we all get on teams, we have those conversations, and then we have a day like we had yesterday. We're all together, we're bringing together our ideas, and then we'll all go away and do our own project stuff. We could have done that on Teams. We didn't need to have been together, but I'm still a director of people of that business, so I have to be in it to an extent, a personal thing.
Mhairi, you wanted to come back to something Katherine said.
What did I say?
No, it's fine, don't worry. It was really one of the, you asked what the benefits were, and one of the things I was going to say is your people have come with you on the journey. They have known every step of the way what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and so they're engaged, and you'll get retention from that. You won't lose people because they've seen what you're trying to do to keep their job safe. That was it really. But going back to the you will still get gatherings of people. I think you'll have sessions where you need to brainstorm, which sometimes it will be better to do physically, sometimes you can do it remotely, and I think, but we don't need to be seeing each other every day. We don't need to talk about what you had for dinner yesterday. And now I'm going to come across as really negative. but it will be about delivering the result. It's not about present. It's not about being present.
So you're talking about a more focused working environment.
Yeah.
And that focus is going to very much depend on the individual in that case, which I suppose, Claire, means that the environment in which that person is working, it's going to become even more important than perhaps it has been in the past, when you might have had people working at desks together and you would talk about what you'd seen on the telly last night or what you're going to have tonight, and there would have been a social aspect to work. Do you see that disappearing then?
No, I completely disagree. So what I believe is, I don't completely disagree, but so in I think I mentioned to you before we started, I focus on, a part of my job is workplace anthropology, which is looking how the human condition reacts in the built environment. And pre the pandemic, lots of the research we did, we went and did lots of observation at WeWorks, at a number of WeWorks here and in Europe. And we watched, basically anthropology is just watching and recording, and we watched how people interact with space. And before the pandemic, people used WeWorking spaces as an opportunity. Some people used them because they were small startups of 40 people and they took over a big chunk of WeWorks. But what they were, the spaces that were being used the most were spaces that were focused spaces. The spaces that weren't getting quite as much use were the spaces for collaboration and social interaction. What's now happened is corporate real estate footprints are shrinking. That is a fact. Within 5 years, even if you don't own your real estate, you will have shrunk your portfolio. So what people are looking to do is make their real estate be the most effective it can possibly be, so that people will invest in their real estate as opposed to the person down the street. And what people will come together to do is to connect with their tribe. I know that's a bit of a trendy sort of term, but they will come together to connect with their tribe. And actually what you can do at home at your desk is focus heads down work. But what you can't do is talk about the football, talk about what you had to eat, a great film you saw. And if we look at this, we go back to this whole generation thing, that the social element of work is incredibly important because they are younger, they are leaving marriage later, they're leaving having children later. Good, well done, I say. And what is actually important to them is work includes their social life and their social connection. So you will touch into work, I believe, to make these social connections. And so what we are looking at in terms of the way the design of the workplace is changing is social spaces are becoming a prerequisite. The heads down focus, not so important. Bench desking, lots of people on a bench, less important. And that's actually changing the type of furniture people are buying. So people are buying furniture that sits lower, that is deeper, that creates a much more relaxed seat, because that relaxed posture completely changes the interactions you have.
The Medigold Health Group is one of the UK's most trusted occupational health and well-being providers, helping businesses to keep their people in work, safe and well for over 2 decades by delivering services including absence management, employee screening and mental health and well-being programs to over 2,500 clients and over 3 million individual employees. Twice winners of the Big Business of the Year category at the Northamptonshire Business Excellence Awards, Medigold is redefining corporate healthcare through its commitment to clinical quality and technological innovation, and supporting businesses of all sizes to succeed in achieving their workplace well-being goals. This is January's edition of All Things Business, the podcast. We're talking this month about maximising the potential of the workforce, and having started to discuss tribalism in the workplace, I asked Katherine if she'd been buying lots of low-level, socially supportive furniture for her tribe at Wyboston Lakes.
Bizarrely enough, I was at a meeting in London about 2.5 years ago, pre-pandemic, and I was sat in this chair for this conference all morning. It was the most uncomfortable thing, and I had a team meeting the next day with my team. Beautiful sunny day, and I was thinking we need some of those outdoor beanbags. I wonder if I can get some for tomorrow. And that was on the train on the way back from London. I was on all these websites trying to find outdoor beanbags for the next day. Didn't know that we had some because I hadn't been there that long, but we do have a couple of in our conference centres spaces that are creative space. We have a room called the Apple, which is a creative space. There is no tables there. Well, there's like coffee tables, but it's creative space where I quite often have said to my team, well, let's go and use that room. Very often isn't available because it's in use quite a lot, because people want that space, and it gives completely different environment. In our team meeting yesterday, we were in a meeting room, whereas it's just like, to be able to get the best out of all of us, to relax, to chat through what are we wanting to achieve, especially as a people team. What we spent a couple of days last summer going, what do we want to achieve?
So it may be too early for you to be able to answer this question, but if you're going to have that kind of sociability, that socialism in one space, and yet you're also talking about people being able to work in a hybrid environment where part of the time they're at home or they're not in the office, are you seeing the benefits of that hybrid working now, in line with what Claire was saying in terms of not only technology facilitating work, but also that tribalism that is still going to be important to business? And I'm thinking about that from the point of view of perhaps smaller businesses that may well be listening to this and saying, well, I'm not in London, I'm not in a city, I've got a small workforce, but I want to be able to maximise the potential from them. I want to bring their skills out. Are there benefits to be had in that way? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, it is quite early to tell, but the people who are hybrid working in the main are the ones who've worked all the way through. So our sales teams have all worked from home. They weren't able to come together, but they do have a team meeting once a month all together. So that time is spent, all the work they've been having their heads down, working at the desk at home and doing that. And then they bring together all their ideas of where they've been working and talking to different people. And I think sometimes when you're sat at a desk in an office the whole time with that same environment around you, it can be quite dull, can't it? I do have a lot of pictures in my office, and if you have sharing offices, you can't always have that personality in there. So when you've got that environment that you feel more creative in, you can then, when you come together, whether it be in a meeting room or whether it be in a more creative space, or we quite often used to have our weekly catch-ups on the picnic tables down by the lake. Very fortunate we've got that place to be able to do it. But it was a completely different environment that made you think differently because you're not in a meeting room.
So, Mhairi, if I come back to you with what you were saying with churn and what you were talking about the big quit, what we seem to have been hearing so far is that technology is very important. Well, there's a training requirement in that. The ability to socialise with each other, whether we're doing that in a hybrid working environment or not, is still very important because that sparks creativity. But equally, you've got to play to the strengths of the individuals who work in your environment and give them an environment where they thrive, whether that's working away and using Teams or Zoom or whatever it might be, but also treating them as human beings as well. Is that a message for business operators right now as we start to look at the end of the 2020-21 year and start thinking about 2021, 2022?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, I would always say, ask people what they want, actually. There's always a great level of assumption that you know what's best for your people, and actually ask is the best thing that you can do. Yes, you're going to get all sorts of different suggestions and not everybody's going to agree, but that's the point. It's not a one size fits all. It's finding the right solution for each person. And I think somehow we got at cross purposes, because what I was saying is that actually people do need to, you are on your own for focus work and you get brought together for that collaboration and that magic to happen. And I actually feel that would make it happen more often. But one thing that you miss in having that busy workplace is the accidental encounters, the little bits of spark that happen with people who don't work in your team, who just say a couple of words that trigger something in your mind. And I think that's where the upskilling comes, and where this cross, what should they call it, mashing up different sectors. You know, you get somebody from a different sector who hasn't got all the traditional training that half the other people have, but has got a different perspective. And then I was also going to go into the whole, what happens when the next generation all want to work in the virtual world? They don't want to work in the real world. That's going to be a whole other...
I think I hate to talk about the next generation, or like my children's generation, they're in the workforce now. It definitely applies that they are connected to technology, and as far as the built environment, and that's all I can speak about with any confidence, is if it's not connected, they won't use the space. So if they can't access technology or connect to technology, they will disengage from that space. And that's borne out by data that's collected from smart buildings. And I think the biggest thing is they want an element of social connection. Absolutely they do. Probably more than, say, I do. they want to have social connection. They also, really importantly, need positive affirmation from those they work alongside. They want feedback. You know, you reach a certain age where, yeah, we all want to be told we're doing a good job, but we're sort of confident in where we are. Whereas if you're starting out in your journey, you want somebody mentoring you and saying, yeah, you've done that really well, let's have some feedback. That's the one thing that I would say, going back to your area of expertise, Mhairi, is that we have so many managers that haven't been taught how to manage people remotely, and that's the huge problem. If you sit in an office and you can see your team, that's one skill, being able to manage people who are in eye contact. But if you're not, and you haven't been told how to manage people over Teams or whatever, it's a completely different set of skills, and it requires you to have to retrain the way you do things, and people aren't being offered that training.
So are you saying, therefore, that to manage the potential and to maximise the potential of a workforce, actually there's a training need for management,
definitely,
rather than rank and file members of the workforce?
And you know, for me, my team aren't based in the UK. So my team are based in Scandinavia. And when travelling became impossible, I didn't see them. And everything was done on Zoom, on Teams, and using Miro boards and all that sort of stuff. And then when travel opened up, I went back to doing my every month, go to Scandinavia, spend some time. And actually, what it did for me was I went on a very sharp learning curve, because I was presented, and all my team are a lot younger than me, thinking, well, I've made these assumptions that these people will be great just connecting with me over Teams. They're young, it'll be great, it'll be fine. But actually, you know, the weeks that I would go out there and I'd spend a week out there, we got so much more done than the 3 weeks when we're communicating over Teams. And actually, I'd go there for the week. We'd really be very focused about what it was we were trying to achieve. We'd set deadlines and timeframes. We'd have lots of creative sessions and lots of writing on walls and things. And I would disappear. But I think I made huge assumptions that because I had the technology, that technology would somehow make up for me not actually being there. And it didn't as well as I thought it would.
So development requirement for management in that case, to look at the technology which rank and file members of a workforce will already have distilled down because they're using it already. Katherine, from your point of view, does that give you an agenda, or is that something that you've recognised and you've been doing anyway, in terms of other businesses doing the same thing to maximise the potential of their workforces?
It's two ways of looking at it. It's the people that are coming to use our facilities, and what they're coming to us for, and also what we're doing with our team. So again, with our operational teams who have to be in every day because that's what they need to do. There's a lot of operational work. Then we have the team meetings and we have the social aspect of that. So that all works really well. And they're the younger people who are wanting that social connection that we've talked about. That they're all very local. So they love that social connection, whereas the people who are probably doing the remote working more, albeit that they are coming in. So if you take our finance team, for instance, they're all in the office 2 or 3 days a week. So they have that social connection on the days that they're in, then they have their focus time. So I think for our team, it's what the businesses coming into us are using. So when we have the hotel refurb is completed, we have got co-working space going in, and that's the first time we've had where we have serviced offices. Currently they are a business rents an office space and that's theirs, however big that be, small or large business. This will be the co-working space, the WeWork type environment. So this is the first time we're going into that environment, so it will be interesting to see how that gets used, who wants it, and also how much we might make use of that. Because I just think, well, if we can't get into a conference room, we don't have dedicated necessary office space for everybody all the time. If there's the creative space in there, how can we make use of that so that when I meet with my team, we're getting out the most out of that time, that we all meet together once a month as a focused moving forward on our projects.
The pace of change for all business has been forced by the exterior implications of coronavirus and the recession that then was triggered by it. The next All Things Business podcast will be going out in a month's time. I'd like to ask each of you to give a suggestion as to one thing that a business operator, a business owner might do in the coming 4 weeks, based on what you've all been talking about today, that might move their business forward in terms of maximizing the potential of their workforce, whether it being a training point of view, an environment point of view, learning from your client's point of view. Mhairi, you're not going to get much thinking time on this one. I apologise for that, but someone's got to get the ball rolling. One thing that business operators could do, should consider in the coming 4 weeks.
Developing their people. Really, it's that time of year. Everybody's looked at what are the targets for 2022? Where are we aiming for, etc. Who are you delivering that through, and what are you doing to make sure they actually have the right skill set to do that? I think you're absolutely right in that managing people remotely is a very different. It's not a different skill set for good managers. It is a different skill set for those who have got by on physically being there.
Claire?
I think it's about making the workplace their chosen destination. So actually what you need to do is, work is an activity, it's not a place. That's real corny cliche, but it's an activity. And actually what you've got to do with your workplace is, if you're in a lease that's got another 15 years on it, you've got your workplace. So what you need to do is make the workplace where people actually want to do their work activity. And that can be really simple things. Some of the things I talk about in the organisations I talk about, people will go, yeah, but we're not Facebook, we're not Google, we employ 20 people. But it is as simple as the things that Google get right, the things that eBay get right are really basic fundamentals. They do good coffee. It can get people in. I won't go into work. Now, if the coffee I get at work is lousy, I can get much better coffee at home, and I drink coffee intravenously. Why would I go into work for crap coffee? So it's simple things. Good coffee, comfortable places to sit. If people can't have access to good food in the working day, but you want them to be there all day, give them good food. It's as simple as that, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a strength at Wyboston Lakes already. So, Katherine, you've now got to come up with something else.
Thanks. Really. I think it's going back to something that you said earlier, Mhairi. It's for us, because our business is quiet this January, obviously, with coronavirus. So we're really ramping up from February onwards. And it's key to us is where we've had so many people not around properly for the past 2 years is, what do they want? What development do they want? Obviously, we're going through review processes at the moment. What development? What do they want? Nurturing them, engaging with them, find out exactly what it is so that we can give them. We're giving our customers what we want, so we need to make sure we give our team what we want. To me, it's as important, if not more important, because if we're not giving them what they want, they're not going to give the customers. So it's that nurturing, it's that development. Where do they want to go? How can we help them to get there? We know that, although you said earlier we're a big employer, we're not really. We've only got about 250 at the moment. So, and if there's not somewhere for them to go onto within our business in the future, we want to give them the best skills that they can possibly have to take somewhere else and go, I learnt that at Wyboston.
Food for thought from all three of you, and it's been a real education, a real pleasure to get this first podcast put together for 2022, albeit that we're not yet out of the financial year for 2020-2021. Mhairi, Claire, Katherine, have a fantastic year. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We all want the bare necessities of life. To have a place we can call home. To have a family that's happy and united. To have protection for your loved ones. To have a good job where you're valued. But life is full of ups and downs, and sometimes we all need a bit of friendly legal expertise to smooth things out. Visit our website to find out more. Wilson Brown Solicitors. We're all the help you need.
Many thanks to our first panel of the 2022 season for All Things Business, the podcast. Thanks to you too for listening. I hope you enjoyed what you heard and found something that might be of help in your own workplace. Don't forget, you can also listen to previous editions of the podcast here. Until next month, though, good luck and take care.